Okay, welcome to Chapter 14. Chapter 14 is a continuation of the Java FX library, and this time we're doing graphics, effects, and media, page 909. Okay, so whenever you're dealing with two-dimensional graphics like, a circle or a square, you really need a coordinate system to go along with it. Otherwise, you won't be able to say, I want it, 10 wide, and I want it scooted over left, 4 positions, that kind of thing. And so here's what the coordinate system looks like in this world. This is a typical 640 by 480 window where the upper left-hand corner is the 0, 0. Now, if you're a mathematician, you kind of think that the 0, 0 is always in the lower left-hand, but hey, in the computer world, it's almost always going to be the upper left-hand corner. Hey, go figure. Okay, so now that I have a coordinate system, I need to put a container in my application that doesn't really have any predetermined layout, because I'm going to be very specifically telling it where I think I want to go. I'm going to be drawing things, etc. So I need what's basically a naked container. Well, there's one called pane, and so it's a container, but it doesn't actually have any layout. It doesn't like like HBox and VBox will have some sort of a rules you have to apply, but here it doesn't. So I've got a project started here just to save a little bit of time. And here's what my project is. It's just a simple thing. I create a brand new pane. I build a scene with that pane at 640 by 480, and then I set the thing and run. So I'm just going to run this just to prove that it works. Make sure I didn't make any mistakes. And it should just be a naked window that's 640 by 480 up there. Yay! Okay, cool. All right. So the first thing we're going to learn is the shape class. Now, the shape class is an abstract class, which means you don't ever actually really, create an instance of the shape class. All it does is provide the rules for all the rest of the shapes. And there's lots of shapes. I mean, there's lines and circles and rectangles and, all sorts of things like that. Okay. So the first one on page 911 is the line class, and it's actually pretty simple. You basically build a line, and then you set the coordinates, and you start, like with the start coordinates, and you go to the end coordinates. I mean, that kind of sort of makes sense. Isn't that how you define a line? A starting location and ending location? Cool. Okay, so let's just do us a line. So I'm going to go up to here, and I'm going to say, I want a line, and we'll just call it L1 because I can't. How about LN1? That's a good one. LN1 is equal to new line, and I want to start in the 0, 0 position, right? That up there, right? And then I want to go to the opposite corner, which would be, instead of 640, it'd be 639, right? 639. Instead of 480, it'd be 479, right? That kind of makes sense. So these guys are set up. So this would be a diagonal line, wouldn't you think? Starts in one corner and goes to the other corner. Let me import the guy. And then in here, I'm going to put this guy in LN1. All right, let's just make sure that we haven't screwed up. Let's see if we have a diagonal line in there. Machine's being a little pokey today for some reason. Oh, there it is. Yay! We got a diagonal line. Hooray! Okay, let's do a diagonal line in the other direction. All right, so in the other corner, right? So I'm going to do line LN2 is equal to new line. That part basically the same, except this time I do 639 0 and then 0 749 or 8. So what if I'm dyslexic? So this should be in the other direction, right? Kind of makes sense. Let's make sure I didn't do anything stupid. Let me add that to my guy here. LN2. Let's make sure it works. Although this thing's running so slow, maybe I ought not to. Okay, yay! All right, so now we need to tweak some things. I want to make some, because, drawing lines is kind of boring. let's go in here and make some tweaks. So for the first one, I'm going to change its color for no particular reason. So LN1, and then there's a bunch of things in here. I could do set stroke. Set stroke. And stroke is going to provide me an opportunity to change the color. And so I'm going to use this color dot guy because color dot is an enumeration, and I'm going to go ahead and change it to red. But of course, it's never heard of this before in its entire life, and I have to add that guy to it. Okay, so while I'm here, I'm also going to do for LN2, I'm going to set the width of this thing, the stroke width. Set stroke width. Okay, and then I'm going to change it to, I don't know, 4. All right, let's see what that looks like. So one of them ought to be red, and the other one ought to be thicker than it was before. Yay! Okay, so that's basically, I mean, there's a couple other things you need to learn about lines, but it's not much to it. The idea of, setting a stroke and setting a stroke width kind of sort of makes sense. I think maybe they should have said something like set stroke color, but hey, they didn't ask me. All right, so the next one is on page 914 is the circle class. All right, that's pretty simple. All you do is you give it the center coordinates and a radius. That's it. I'm thinking, man, this is easy. I don't have to think too much about this. So let's build us a circle. So I'm going to go down to here and I'm going to go circle. C1 is equal to no circle. And so I'm going to tell it that it's going to be at the halfway mark, right? So I'm going to say 320 by 240, if I'm doing my math right. And how about we'll make it 100 big. So a radius of 100. And of course, it's never heard of a circle before its entire life, and I have to do an import. Okay, so first of all, this one, before we had like stroke and stroke width, okay? But here we have a new thing. We have the concept of stroke and fill. So the stroke is going to be the outside edge, and the fill is going to be the color, the stuff on the inside, right? Kind of makes sense? Okay, so I've added my color, my circle onto here, and let's just see what it looks like. Now, by default, the stroke and fill color is black, unless you tell it otherwise, which is like, ugh. Okay. All right, so we're going to go here and tweak some things. So let's go in here and say C1, and then I'm going to say, I'm going to do set stroke like we did before. And this time I'm going to do, I don't know, color blue. And to tell you the truth, to be able to see the blue, I'm going to have to change its width a little bit. Otherwise, I won't be able to actually see it. So I'm going to go ahead and do the set stroke guy. Set stroke width. Dang. And we'll change it to, I don't know, 3. But then I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to say set fill. Okay. Now, the stroke, of course, is the outside edge. That kind of sort of makes sense. So I can go in here and change something. But the fill is going to be what's going to be on the inside. And so that's just normally a typical color. So let's just make it light green. Light green. Cool. All right, let's go see what this looks like. So we should have a circle in the center with a relatively thick blue border and then a light green smack dab. Okay, everything so far so good. This is actually kind of fun. It's really not that much to it. Once you've done 1 or 2 of these, like if we were to take the time to learn every single one of the shapes, it'd be the same, right? Once you've learned that part, that's all there is. I am going to do a rectangle because I need to be able to show you the rotate and stretch features. So we're going to build some rectangle. So here we go. Rectangle. Let's just call it R1 is equal to new rectangle. If I can spell. And I'm going to do, this is going to be a 100 by 100 rectangle. I'm sorry, starting at position 100, 100. And let's just make it 50 by 50. So this will be a square that's over 100 and over this way 100. Okay, and of course it's never heard of rectangle before in its entire life. And we have to do yet another import. Okay, let's throw our R1 into the batch here. And let's go see what it does. And there's our little rectangle. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you do a rotate. I couldn't show you the rotate with a circle because it would not have done anything for me. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to go here and say R1. Whoa, no I'm not. I'm going to go to here and say R1, and then I'm going to say set rotate. And then put in, I don't know, 45 degrees. Set rotate 45 degrees. And so instead of being, well, it'll look like kind of sort of like a diamond now because it's going to be rotated 45 degrees. Cool? All right. That kind of makes sense. All right, so the next thing we're going to learn is this thing about making changes to the scaling. I can set the scale of something. Like I want to stretch it out. After it's done, I want to stretch it. So I'm going to do R1 set scale, and there's a scale X. I want it to be 2 times what the X direction is, and R1 set scale Y. I want to keep it the way it was. So I'm changing the X direction. Now, here's an interesting thing that occurs when you do this scaling. You see how I did the rectangle first, and then I did a rotate, and after I did the rotate, I did the scale? That's not how it works. Did you notice that it did not take the rotated object and stretch him out like this? It took the original object and stretched him out and then rotated him. Kind of weird, huh? That the order in which you put these doesn't really matter because the rotate happens last, even after scaling? I don't know. Kind of catch me by surprise occasionally. Okay, so the next thing we're going to learn, going to be looking at my notes here. You know, again, all the rest of the shapes, they're kind of simple. So I'm going to skip over a bunch of those guys and go directly to doing animation. Okay, so their animation on page 940, their animation isn't necessarily like super duper animation. It's about something moved on the screen. I mean, that's about all there is. In order to do this, I'm going to need a button to be able to turn, have my animation start and stop, right? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this guy, and we're going to put in a button for doing animation. So here we go. So here we are. We do button B1 is equal to no button, and I'm going to call, I don't know, animate, since I can't think of a better word. Okay, cool. And of course, it's never seen this thing called button before, so I have to go in here and do that. And let's go ahead and go in here and add our button before I forget about him. Okay, so now I have a button, and I basically need to build me an event handler, right? So this is going to be the same old event handler like we've always used before, right? It's not going to be complicated at all. So in here, I'm going to say, I'm going to go in here and say button, and then I'm going to say on action. You guys remember how this thing works, right? On, whoa, sorry. It'd be set, sorry. Set on action. And the event handler is just going to be the normal event handler like we've been doing. So I'm going to say new event handler. And it's going to be the same old action event like we've always done. And then we're going to do the bow legs. Then we're going to try desperately to put our cursor right there and hit the carriage return, and then it's going to ignore us. And so we try it a second time. And we put the curly braces in. Okay. And of course, this guy has never seen us before in his entire life. One more time to get the event handler, and we're coming up on the 15-minute mark. Okay, you guys know how this works.